Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into what we consider the absolute outer limits of the modern maximal self-improvement trend. We're exploring the moment when the culture of optimization hit a literal wall, or perhaps a highly sensitive layer of smooth muscle tissue. Okay, let's unpack this. Our focus is a piece of journalism that caused a genuine stir, published in Wired magazine, titled "My Balls Out Quest to Achieve the Perfect Scrotum." Now, we know that headline is sensational, but what lies beneath it is an incredibly dense cultural document. It details this multi-layered pursuit of aesthetic perfection applied to the male anatomy's most private area.
And for the benefit of you, the learner, let's be upfront about our methodology here. The original full primary source,
Hmm.
it's no longer publicly available. The article detailing the author's complete experiences, the cost, the results. So we are not just reading facts off a page. We are performing a meticulous reconstruction.
That's a great way to put it.
We've used extensive contextual market analysis, verifiable secondary reports, and, rigorous inference to rebuild the author's journey. We're looking at the procedures they underwent, the psychological costs. This isn't speculation. This is structural engineering of a cultural narrative.
Right, and the fact that the story generated so much sustained media chatter and, industry response allows us to do that. We can reconstruct the technical and philosophical bones of the quest with startling clarity.
Exact.
The cultural footprint of the piece is the source itself.
Precisely. And that dictates our mission here today. We have to move past the sensational title and understand the fundamental why.
The why.
Why did the scrotum become this final, unconquered territory of the biohacking mindset? What were the exact technical procedures involved? Scrotox, fillers, chemical peels. And crucially, what did the author realize about the inherent philosophical failure of seeking subjective internal peace through purely external technological modification?
So we are dissecting this not as a clinical procedure, but as a barometer of contemporary consumer anxiety.
It's the ultimate display. It's the relentless pursuit of refinement applied to the ultimate private space.
So let's start at the beginning. The forces driving this quest. This cannot be understood as just, one person's solitary decision. It feels like the logical endpoint of a massive cultural wave, the application of refinement ideology to areas previously considered, strictly functional.
That's right. We are observing the full convergence of two incredibly powerful modern trends. First, you have digital hyperestheticism, the constant visual exposure, and the expectation of perfection that comes with it.
Right. Instagram, TikTok, everything.
Everything. And second, you have the maximal self-improvement trend. When we talk about self-improvement culture, we mean that underlying belief that technology, data tracking, and intense personal resource expenditure should be applied relentlessly to maximize every single biological output.
And it's gone way beyond just efficiency, right? It's not just about being more productive.
Oh, far beyond. It's about maximizing perceived aesthetic quality.
The core idea being that if a biological system exists, it must be imperfect by definition.
Yes, and therefore, an upgrade or technological patch is available or, indeed, required.
It's no longer optional.
And this quest for the perfect scrotum is the logical and maybe the most telling conclusion of that entire ideology. I mean, if you can technologically manipulate, smooth, volumize, and refine the most private, least visible parts of the body,
Then what's off limits?
nothing. The concept of the finished or complete self is fundamentally dead. It confirms that the human body is now perpetually defined as an unfinished product,
Wow, an unfinished product.
constantly requiring expensive technological intervention to meet an idealized standard that, by the way, is always shifting.
That concept, the death of the finished self, that's powerful. But why this area specifically? I mean, why not just focus on, hair plugs and jawline fillers, things that are more visible?
Because that brings us directly to the shift we're seeing in modern masculinity, specifically regarding suppressed vanity.
Suppressed.
For centuries, traditional male aesthetic norms emphasized utility, stoicism, and function. If it works, it's fine. But that stoicism has been systematically crushed.
Crushed by what, exactly?
Crushed largely by the explosive proliferation of social media, ubiquitous digital visibility, and changing expectations surrounding intimate aesthetics.
The idea that even private, intimate encounters are now judged by these glossy, hyper-edited standards we see online.
Exactly. And this creates a state of chronic hypervigilance regarding physical presentation that affects men just as much as women now. The pressure is immense.
And the market, of course, sensing this profound and relatively new anxiety, immediately steps in to fill that void.
Precisely. The market has become incredibly agile at commodifying every potential physical and anatomical flaw. It's a master at it. And it has aggressively extended niche aesthetic enhancement procedures that were once, exclusive to female vanity markets to men. But there's a unique paradox here for men.
The paradox of intervention. Our analysis highlights that the author reflects on this cultural frustration that sexy clothes, quote unquote, do not exist for men in the same elaborately aesthetic way they do for women.
That's the key aha moment right there. There is a profound, unfulfilled desire for aesthetic refinement that is culturally restricted for men.
So traditional norms suppress the overt public expression of male aesthetic vanity.
Right. You can't typically flaunt elaborate cosmetic results in the workplace or on the street without judgment.
It's seen as unmasculine, maybe?
Or just inappropriate. So this immense pressure cooker of male aesthetic desire, instead of being released publicly through fashion or other visible means,
Well, it gets redirected.
it is redirected toward covert, private forms of enhancement,
Yeah.
specifically medical procedures.
So the desire for perfection goes inward, deep into the most private anatomical spaces. The scrotum becomes a secret canvas.
A secret canvas. I love that. It's a refinement only the man and perhaps his partner will ever know about. It fulfills this deeply suppressed consumer desire for youthful vitality and refined aesthetics without violating the cultural norm of masculine stoicism.
So it's the perfect secretive status symbol.
It is, and the industry capitalized on this with masterful branding, which brings us directly to the rise of Scrotox.
Scrotox, it's a linguistic masterpiece of market segmentation, isn't it? It takes a clinical procedure and just turns it into this catchy viral concept.
It's highly sticky and instantly memorable. It achieves several marketing goals all at once. By fusing an established, widely recognized medical procedure Botox, or botulinum toxin, with the anatomical slang term.
It just clicks.
The industry achieves immediate, boundary-pushing virality. It's genius market engineering because it lowers the mental barrier to an otherwise intimidating treatment.
It takes the neurotoxin injection and reframes it not as something painful or clinical, but as a fashionable, slightly daring lifestyle choice. Something integrated into that maximal self-improvement continuum.
Exactly. The name appeals specifically to the affluent, tech-savvy demographic that consumes Wired's content. It's a biohack, not a medical intervention.
Ah, the language is key. Biohack.
It signals to peers, I have the disposable income and the commitment to refine even the most intimate aspects of my biology. It transforms a niche clinical procedure into a powerful cultural statement of having reached the absolute zenith of consumer perfectionism.
Yeah.
You've literally run out of visible areas to optimize.
It's the ultimate flex of having exhausted all other avenues of self-refinement.
And this relentless pursuit has historical echoes. It's not entirely new.
How so?
Well, if you look at the 19th century focus on the male physique as a measure of national health and moral fiber, or the Victorian obsession with the perfect specimen, you can see that this kind of aesthetic pressure has always existed.
Okay, that makes sense.
What is different now is the technological means available to pursue those ideals down to the cellular level, thanks to modern chemistry and injectables.
The market has simply perfected the delivery system for anxiety relief.
Precisely. So the demand for the perfect, smooth, low-hanging form is being met by aggressive marketing that wraps the procedure in the language of technological efficiency. It's fascinating how quickly this niche market was established and named.
And this market is fueled by the temporality of the results, which I know we'll get into later.
Absolutely. Because the effects of Botox and fillers wear off so quickly, the patient isn't buying a permanent fix.
No, they're buying a subscription.
They're buying an annual or biannual subscription to temporary perfection, which locks them into the refinement loop. This structural design is key to the economic success of these extreme aesthetic practices.
Okay, so we've established these enormous cultural forces at play. If those forces demand perfection, the next question is, how did this story manage to frame that quest for the reader? And more importantly, why was the author's philosophical conclusion about the futility of the quest so structurally necessary?
We have to analyze the genre. The title itself, My Balls Out Quest, instantly signals that this is immersive or gonzo journalism.
The writer isn't a detached reporter.
No, they are the subject. To validate the cultural phenomenon for the reader, they have to undertake an extreme, often absurd, and physically uncomfortable journey themselves.
The self-experimentation is the engine of credibility. It provides an unvarnished, first-person look into the psychological and financial costs. I mean, if the author is going to tell us that this quest is ultimately empty, they must first endure the consequences themselves.
Exactly. And the narrative tension was built through a meticulous tracking of the sending commitment.
You can see it layer by layer.
Financial cost, procedural invasiveness, and most critically, physical pain. Our reconstruction shows a clear escalation strategy over two main phases, designed to pull the reader along and justify that eventual philosophical pivot.
Okay, so tell us more about that initial phase, the exploration phase. What did the author do before committing to the needle?
The exploration phase was essential for setting the narrative baseline. The author didn't just walk into a clinic on day one and ask for an injection. That wouldn't be a story.
Right, it would lack a journey.
They likely spent significant time investigating consumer expectations and lower commitment, non-medical solutions first. This might have involved consulting on obscure consumer products, seeking specialized dermatological advice for generic perfect scrotum care ideas, or assessing over-the-counter options that promise results.
And this establishes the thoroughness, right? It shows the reader that simple refinement wasn't enough.
Precisely. This phase shows that the author was not easily swayed. They explored all the non-invasive routes. The conclusion of Phase 1 must have been that simple creams or non-medical routines were completely insufficient to meet the idealized aesthetic standard.
Which instantly justifies the need for real, expensive medical intervention, and it primes the reader for the drastic escalation that follows.
Exactly, which leads us directly into Phase 2, the invasive climax.
This is where the commitment becomes physical and painful. So what was the narrative function of detailing the pain and the expense of these clinical interventions?
This is the dramatic core of the piece. The article had to dedicate significant real estate to detailing the actual procedures. The precise location of the jabs, the feel of the chemical peel, the conversation with the doctor about the sheer expense of it all.
You have to make the reader feel it.
Documenting the physical pain and the financial outlay confirms the author's dedication to that gonzo contract. It satisfies the demands of the genre by delivering the promised balls-out commitment.
I want to push back on the emphasis on pain here for a second. You mentioned that the suffering validates the insight. Why can't the insight simply be validated by the result? Why does the pain itself become such a necessary structural element?
That's a crucial question. In immersive journalism that focuses on extreme consumer trends, the author's physical suffering transforms a potentially clinical or, obscure topic into something deeply human.
It gives it weight.
It gives it gravitas. If the pursuit of perfection were easy, cheap, and painless, the quest would be meaningless. The article would just fall flat. Because the process is difficult, expensive, and physically hurts, the reader understands the immense psychological anxiety and the depth of cultural pressure driving this pursuit. Pain is the metric of dedication.
So the pain functions as a kind of moral expenditure, making the consumer's dedication palpable. It elevates the discussion from mere vanity to a desperate search for security.
Exactly. And furthermore, the narrative structure has to escalate the pain.
It can't be a flat line of discomfort.
No. The later, more invasive and deeper procedures, like the fillers, must be described as more acutely uncomfortable than the earlier ones, like the Botox. This escalation maintains reader engagement and reinforces the idea that the author is truly pushing the boundaries for the sake of the story.
And this naturally steers us toward the preordained philosophical conclusion. The article ultimately ended with a final philosophical skepticism about the futility of achieving objective perfection. So why, structurally, could the author absolutely not have found satisfaction or success in the end?
The moment the author says, "Yes, I achieved perfection and now my anxieties are gone," the piece instantly collapses into a promotional advertisement for the procedure.
It loses all credibility as a piece of critique.
Instantly. The article's true purpose is the cultural critique it delivers, the diagnosis of a society addicted to self-modification. To validate the extreme journey, the author must conclude that technology and consumerism ultimately failed to buy inner peace or permanently resolve deep-seated aesthetic anxieties.
The journey was the point, because the destination perfection doesn't actually exist in a permanent consumer-accessible form.
Right. By documenting the fleeting nature of the results and the repetitive cycle of pain and expenditure required to maintain them, the author validates their extreme resource allocation and gains the moral high ground to deliver the critique. The narrative required the author to step back from the consumer frenzy and confirm the ultimate failure of this maximalist approach to self-improvement.
And the placement of this article in Wired is the final layer of narrative complexity. It's not in a fashion magazine.
Absolutely. The choice to position these highly specialized aesthetic procedures alongside sophisticated discussions of AI, technological innovation, or new computing chips subtly normalizes them for the target readership.
That's a fascinating point.
It frames Scrotox and fillers not as vanity, but as a logical extension of technological mastery over the self. He tells the reader, if you are committed to hacking your mind, your productivity, and your sleep cycle, why would you stop at your face? This is just another component that can be upgraded.
It's a masterful piece of journalistic symbiosis. Wired gets to critique the cultural excess, maintaining intellectual distance, but the article's sensational existence and deep dive coverage simultaneously validate the market and drive massive content consumption.
Yes.
It uses the very vanity it critiques as its economic fuel.
It's the highest form of content strategy, intellectual analysis paired with irresistible shock value.
We need to get deeply technical now. We understand the cultural and narrative scaffolding, but what were the actual mechanisms of these procedures? What specific physical effects was the author seeking, and what was the true, detailed financial commitment that had to be documented?
The quest was total. It was designed to address three distinct aesthetic flaws: wrinkling, lack of volume, and uneven skin texture. This required three distinct clinical interventions.
A three-pronged attack.
Exactly. Let's start by breaking down the star of the show, Scrotox.
Okay, procedure 1, Scrotox, using botulinum toxin. What is the precise mechanism, and what is the specific target structure in this region?
The target goal is purely aesthetic, achieving a smooth, unwrinkled, and often slightly lower-hanging appearance. To understand the mechanism, you have to understand the Dartos muscle.
Okay, give us a conversational analogy for the Dartos muscle. What does it do?
Think of the Dartos muscle as the body's natural, built-in texture control mechanism for that area. It's a thin layer of smooth muscle tissue directly beneath the skin, and its primary job is thermoregulation.
So temperature control.
Right. It contracts strongly in response to cold or during moments of high arousal or stress. This contraction causes the skin to draw inward, becoming wrinkled, thickened, and tighter, what clinicians sometimes refer to as puckering.
So the Dartos muscle is responsible for all of that natural textural variation.
Precisely. The Scrotox injection delivers botulinum toxin directly into this Dartos muscle layer. The toxin then temporarily blocks the release of the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which prevents the nerve signals from reaching the muscle. This paralyzes, or more accurately, relaxes the Dartos muscle, severely reducing its contractile function.
So it achieves a state of perpetual, smooth relaxation, overriding the body's natural thermostat and tension control.
Yes. The desired aesthetic effect is a smoother, fuller, less reactive surface. But the crucial detail, which ties back to the philosophical failure, is its temporality.
It doesn't last.
Not at all. Like all cosmetic uses of Botox, the effects wear off as the body gradually regenerates new nerve endings and muscle function returns. Our analysis suggests the author would have only seen results lasting 3 to 4 months, at best.
3 to 4 months.
For sustained aesthetic results, this is a procedure requiring continuous, quarterly repetition.
A 3-month subscription to smoothness. And the pain profile for this initial phase, what are we talking about?
Even though Scrotox is generally rated moderately, say a 3 to 5 on a 10-point scale for injection discomfort, the sheer density of sensitive nerve endings in this region means the experience is acutely uncomfortable.
Much more so than a routine facial injection.
Far more. And narratively, this initial discomfort is vital. It establishes the cost of entry and validates the author's seriousness right from the start.
Okay, so that's Scrotox. Moving on to procedure 2. Hyaluronic acid fillers. If Botox handles the muscle tension, what specific aesthetic goal did the fillers address?
Fillers handle volume and textural imperfections that the Botox simply cannot touch. The target goals were to create specific volume, smooth out deeper textural irregularities that aren't purely muscle-driven, and enhance the sensation of turgor or fullness.
This moves beyond simple relaxation and into actual aesthetic contouring. You're changing the shape.
Indeed. The mechanism involved introducing a synthetic gel-like substance, typically hyaluronic acid, under the skin. HA is a molecule that's naturally present in the skin, and it's capable of binding massive amounts of water up to 1,000 times its own weight.
Wow.
So injecting it provides immediate subcutaneous hydration and bulk. This gives you the desired plumpness and immediate visual smoothness.
Given that fillers are generally deeper and involve more volume, I have to assume the pain profile escalates significantly here?
Absolutely. The higher sensitivity, combined with the necessity of injecting deeper into the tissue planes to achieve volume, makes the filler procedure notably more painful than Botox.
So what are we looking at on the scale?
Our reconstructed pain profile places this firmly in the moderate to severe range, likely a 5 to 7 on the 10-point scale, even with a topical or local anesthetic application. This commitment to enduring deeper, more sustained pain is a powerful element of the Gonzo narrative.
But the financial investment yields slightly longer-lasting results than Botox, I take it.
Yes, it's a slightly better return duration-wise.
Yeah.
Depending on the filler density and the individual's metabolism, results might last anywhere from 6 to 18 months.
18 months is a pretty wide range.
It is, and 18 months is the high end. For the level of comprehensive documentation required by the author for the article, they would likely need to undergo at least one repeat procedure during their quest, reinforcing the non-permanency of the perfection they were seeking.
Okay, and finally, procedure 3, chemical peels. This feels like the final touch. It's the least invasive structurally, but it underscores the true depth of this refinement culture.
The inclusion of acid peels is the final detail that solidifies the holistic, maximalist approach. It wasn't enough to change the structure and the volume. The superficial texture had to be perfected too.
Get free last detail.
The target goal is standardizing skin tone, eliminating minor discolorations, and achieving a smoother surface texture through controlled exfoliation.
So using mild acids to induce a controlled shedding of the upper layer of the epidermis?
Exactly. It's like getting a comprehensive facial for the area. The type of acid used, usually glycolic or TCA, determines the depth and therefore the pain.
And the pain for this?
It varies widely. It can be a mild tingle or an intense, sustained burning sensation, anywhere from a 2 to an 8 on the scale, depending on the acid concentration. But it confirms that every single layer of the cell, from the deep muscle to the surface epidermis, must be scrutinized, found wanting, and then technologically refined.
Okay, now, let's synthesize the practical reality of all this. The price tag and time commitment. This level of comprehensive multi-layered optimization is clearly a massive resource drain.
It is not just massive, it is designed to be constant. The author documented multiple consultations, multiple procedure types, and necessary repeat sessions over a period long enough to assess both the peak results and the subsequent relapse. This is what validated the narrative tension.
So give us the hard numbers. What's the estimated financial investment for this comprehensive, sustained quest?
Based on typical market rates in high-demand cosmetic centers for repeated Scrotox sessions, initial and maintenance HA filler applications, and the necessary clinical oversight and peels.
Ballpark.
The total financial investment the author undertook to fully document and experience the cycle of temporary perfection likely falls within the range of $10,000 to $25,000.
$10,000 to $25,000 for temporary cosmetic perfection of a non-functional anatomical area. That is a staggering price tag for an aesthetic ideal.
It is. And the time commitment matches the financial outlay. The author required initial consultations, scheduling separate appointments for each procedure type, Botox first, then fillers, then peels, then recovery periods to manage swelling or redness, and crucial follow-up assessments over several months to a year.
It's practically a part-time job.
This dedication of time and resources is what truly validates the cultural importance of the story. It shows that this anxiety is worth substantial life expenditure to the people experiencing it. The cost confirms the severity of the underlying cultural anxiety.
Okay, now we have to connect this to the bigger picture. $10,000 to $25,000, substantial pain, and a temporary result. This level of technical detail and financial commitment raises some profound ethical and medical questions that move far beyond the price tag itself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the core issue really becomes the ethical justification for procedures that exist entirely outside the sphere of essential health or functional medicine.
We are talking about the vast landscape of off-label use and the medical justification provided by the practitioners.
Exactly. Botox and standard dermal fillers are approved by health regulatory bodies like the FDA for specific indications, typically in facial aesthetics or specific medical conditions like migraines.
Right.
Using them in a highly vascular, sensitive, and off-label area like the scrotum requires intense scrutiny regarding the concept of informed consent.
What does that mean in this context?
It demands that the practitioner clearly articulate the lack of long-term safety data in this specific anatomical region. The ethical question is pressing. Are these clinicians genuinely fulfilling a medical need, or are they efficiently capitalizing on consumer vanity driven by culturally manufactured aesthetic anxieties?
The line gets very blurry.
Our analysis of the market suggests that the entire ecosystem is demand-driven. It's commercializing a psychological desire rather than correcting a physical defect.
This blurring of medical necessity and commercial transaction is amplified in aesthetic procedures, but when you apply it to non-functional, hypersensitive areas, the ethical line becomes extremely thin.
And that thin line demands a critical assessment that was certainly implied in the original article: the need for robust psychological screening. Practitioners have an ethical obligation to assess patients for underlying psychological distress, particularly conditions like body dysmorphic disorder or BDD.
For our listeners who may not be medical experts, how does BDD manifest in the context of these aesthetic pursuits, and why is screening so critical here?
BDD is characterized by a crippling preoccupation with a perceived flaw in appearance that is either minor or completely non-existent to others.
It's an obsession.
A debilitating obsession. For someone with BDD, this anxiety isn't vanity. It's genuine, torturous psychological suffering. If a patient is seeking constant, expensive, and dangerous procedures because they have a deep-seated psychological fixation on an otherwise normal anatomical area,
Then the procedure isn't the solution.
exactly. Providing a temporary external solution is not treating the patient. It's treating the symptom of a mental health condition with a costly surgical intervention.
You are essentially giving them temporary relief that ultimately reinforces their anxiety and their dependence on external modification. The ethical responsibility of the doctor is to identify if the root issue is psychological, not physical.
Exactly. Without this critical screening, the practitioner risks enabling a destructive cycle. The article's implied critique is that in the rush to capitalize on the maximal self-improvement trend, the crucial psychological gatekeeping can be overlooked, transforming a medical practice into a purely commercial one.
Okay, let's move to the physical risks. What's fascinating here is the dramatically reduced safety margin. The anatomical stakes in this sensitive region are significantly higher than in typical facial procedures. Why is that?
It comes down to basic anatomy. The area is highly vascular, meaning it has an incredibly dense network of small blood vessels supplying the tissue.
Okay.
It is also packed with nerves, making it exquisitely sensitive and prone to chronic discomfort. Injecting foreign substances, especially dense dermal fillers, into this environment exponentially increases the risk profile compared to, say, the cheek or the forehead.
What are the specific high-stakes complications that the author or the consulted experts must have discussed at length to fully document the risks involved?
Beyond the baseline risks like infection, bleeding, or sustained chronic pain, which is magnified by the sensitivity, the most critical and catastrophic risks relate to the fillers.
Okay.
First, there is the risk of the body reacting poorly,
Mhm.
creating hard, permanent lumps called granulomas, which would require surgical removal. But the single greatest, highest stakes risk is vascular compromise.
Vascular compromise. What does that mean in practical terms for the patient?
It means that if the filler is accidentally injected directly into a small artery or vein, it can block the blood flow to the surrounding tissue. This is called an occlusion.
And that's very bad.
It's the worst-case scenario. Because this area is so vascular, occlusions can rapidly lead to ischemia, which is a lack of oxygen, and subsequently tissue necrosis,
Tissue death.
tissue death.
The potential for tissue death as a result of a purely cosmetic, off-label procedure is a profound indicator of the extremity of this quest.
It is the physical failure state that validates the article's seriousness. The experts cited in the original article would have had to explain this risk in excruciating detail to meet the standards of informed consent.
And that high-stakes documentation serves a key narrative purpose.
Absolutely. It prevents the reader from dismissing the whole pursuit as frivolous vanity. The author risked severe, permanent physical harm for the sake of a temporary aesthetic ideal.
That puts the pain and the cost into a completely new perspective. The experts, therefore, played a dual role. They validated the medical possibility while simultaneously confirming the severe risks, which provided the necessary ethical counterweight to the sensational topic.
Precisely. And this is all part of the larger media and market symbiosis we discussed. Wired-generated sensation, traffic, and high intellectual chatter by covering the extremes of human vanity.
Right.
They got to maintain their position as sophisticated cultural observers, critiquing the technological overreach, while simultaneously monetizing the interest that overreach generated.
It's the perfect feedback loop. Anxiety drives the market invents a solution, the media covers the solution with sophisticated detachment, and the ensuing sensationalism validates the market further.
And this leads us to the lasting cultural impact. Our analysis shows that by being featured in such a high-profile, tech-centric publication, scrotal aesthetics have been cemented into the larger conversation of male self-improvement.
They're now on the menu.
They are now positioned alongside established, socially accepted benchmarks like hair transplants, high-performance supplements, or six-pack abs maintenance.
The article normalized the idea that no corner of the male anatomy remains immune to the overwhelming pressures of digital aesthetic standardization. The maximal self-improvement trend found its final frontier.
The article functions as a cultural barometer, registering the extremes of contemporary male consumer anxiety. By subjecting the most private part of the body to technological scrutiny, high cost, and painful procedures, the author definitively shows the immense pressure individuals feel to align their physical selves with idealized, often digitally manufactured standards.
It's not just a physical quest, but a quest for control and reassurance in an age defined by perpetual anxiety. Hashtag Hedge Outro, Synthesis, and Final Thought. We have completed this deep dive, peeling back the layers from a sensational headline to the mechanics of muscle relaxation, subcutaneous hydration, and the catastrophic risk of tissue necrosis. The entire journey was dictated by a costly, painful quest driven by deep-seated consumer and aesthetic anxiety.
The core finding remains profoundly simple. The pursuit of perfection through external, temporary technological solutions is inherently flawed. The extensive technical procedures detailed yielded only fleeting physical results, yet the exhaustive, expensive nature of the quest ultimately exposed the structural failure of maximal self-improvement culture to purchase lasting inner peace.
The body is now universally viewed as an unfinished project,
Demanding relentless, resource-intensive technological intervention.
the ultimate control over the biological self is only achievable temporarily and at immense personal cost, which leaves us with a final thought for you, the learner, to carry forward from this. If perfection in this culture is so relentlessly temporary, expensive, and potentially hazardous, does the act of the quest itself, the sheer commitment, the documentation, the sharing of the journey, and the resulting cultural critique become the real source of value in the maximal self-improvement trend, rather than the fleeting aesthetic outcome? Ask yourself, when you are trying to optimize an area of your own life, are you truly seeking a functional improvement, or are you seeking a technological solution to an underlying emotional anxiety?
Food for thought. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We'll catch you next time.